All right, guys, this is the main skill video for Unit 2, Week 5, which is the week that we first learn how to solve and graph inequalities. So at this point, you should know how to graph inequalities with our open and closed circles, and then whether it goes left or right. That's what we did in our Desmos lesson. But this is your big rock main skill for the week, which is how to solve and graph two-step inequalities. So the beautiful thing is that inequalities work just like equations, so your steps are actually going to be the same. The first step is look for parentheses and distribute with your arrows. Step 2 is to add or subtract the constant. And then step 3 is to multiply or divide the coefficient, and that's the number with the variable. Okay, so today, these are actually the notes that we go over the second day of this unit in class. So we are solving, testing, and graphing. And we're just going to start with these. So we are going to solve it first. Now, I think none of these in here actually have parentheses. So really, we're just looking at step 2 and step 3. Same thing, we're going to solve it just as if this was an equal sign. And our first step is to add or subtract. So we are going to subtract that 2. And then we are going to bring that 5x down. That 2 would be gone. Keep your symbol. 17 minus 2 is 15. And then step 3 would be to multiply or divide. Almost always it's divide. The only time you're going to multiply is when you see a fraction. We'll do that at the very end. So divide by 5, divide by 5, and then cancel out. X would be greater than 15 divided by 5 is 3. So once you have it solved, your next job is to test. So just like that first slide said, so we're going to solve, we're going to test 0, and then we're going to graph. Now, there is a reason that we test 0. It's because next week something kind of wonky happens with the graphs. So a lot of you are going to say, but I know that's x is greater than 3, so it's going to the right. And you are correct, okay? But again, something a little different happens next week. So that's why we teach you to always test 0. So here's how we test 0. We are going to take our original equation or inequality, and we are going to plug in a 0. And the beautiful thing about plugging in a 0 is that your term with your variable is just gone, because 5 times 0 is just gone. 5 times 0 is 0 plus 2 greater than 17. So that 5 and 0 are gone because 5 times 2 is 0. So really what happens is you can just kind of cover up the 5x with your finger, and what you're left with is 2 is greater than 17. So now you're asking yourself, is that a true statement? Is positive 2 greater than 17? And that is a no. So 0 does not work, and that means it goes away from 0. So away from 0. All right, so then if I go back and get my red here, and then I'll size this up just a little bit. All right, so then what I'm doing is I'm going to place my 3. Oops, let's bring that down a little bit. Place my 3, and then you can put a couple numbers on each side if you want. Oops, 1, and then 0. All right, now we're going to have an open circle because it's greater than 3. And then we are going to go away from 0 because 0 did not work. So away from 0 would be to the right, and that matches that symbol right there. Make sure you kind of remember that symbol should match. All right, next one. So we're going to solve it just like we would a normal equation. So we're going to subtract our 10. I'm going to try and write a little smaller here so it doesn't get too crowded. Bring down my 3x. Keep my sign. So 70 minus 10 is 60. Divide by 3. And then we're going to get x is less than 60 divided by 3 is 20. All right, so at that point, you know that your number on your graph is 20, and it's going to be circled. Your job then is to determine which way it should be going. So if we plug in a 0 right here, plug in 0, 3 times 0 is 0. So again, you can just cover it up. It's gone. And then is 10 less than 70? That is a true statement. So 0 works, meaning we're going to shade toward 0. So toward 0 would be shading this way. And again, make sure that that matches that, and it does. And another thing you can do is you can plug in any number you want. You can plug in 100, you can plug in 1, you can plug in 21, 19, something closer to 20 if you want to know which way it goes. We just always teach to test 0 because it's the easiest one. All right. All right, let's do a couple more. Oops. All right, so this first one is going to have a negative in there, which doesn't change the math. We know how to solve equations with negatives in them. And then this other one is going to have x on the other side, so that's kind of tricky. So let's solve this one. All right, so we are going to subtract 10, and then have your line drawn. That'll go away. Bring your 5x down. And then we're going to keep this symbol right here. Negative 8 minus 10 is negative 18. This looks like one you're going to want to get a calculator for. So it's not going to go in evenly. When I divide by 5, you're going to get x is less than or equal to negative 18 divided by 5 is negative 3.6. All right. Now, this is kind of tricky because number one, it's a decimal and it's a negative. So we are going to bring down our negative 3.6. And I would just maybe put one number on each side. Negative 3.5, negative 3.7. It would be getting smaller to the right and bigger to the left. It's opposite because it's negatives, okay? Now this time, when we make our circle, it's going to be filled in because we have the or equal to sign, okay? And then we need to test 0. So right here, if I plug in a 0, 5 times 0 is 0, and then you'd have a 10 is less than or equal to negative 8. Is 10 less than or equal to negative 8? No, 10 cannot be less than a negative number. So 0 does not work. So we are not shading towards 0, which would be this way. And that does match our less than sign. All right, I am going to, let's do this one. All right, when it's on the other side, the math still works the same way. We're going to add or subtract, so that means we're going to add our 5 here. 11 plus 5 is 16, less than or equal to 2x, and then divide by your 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8, less than or equal to x. All right, so once you have solved it, you know that the 8 is the number that you're looking for. And that's going to be the number that has your circle. It does have the line, so we're going to fill in our circle at 8. And then we need to test 0. So if we plug in a 0 right there, 2 times 0 is 0, so we'd have 11 is less than or equal to a negative 5 when we plug it in. 11 is not less than 5. 11 is greater than 5. So 0 does not work. And then, so if 0 doesn't work, it means we are shading away from 0. And guys, this is where you can kind of double check that you're right, because this one is kind of tricky with the X on the other side. Okay, the mouth opens up towards the X. So if I flip that around, it would be X is greater than or equal to 8, which that sign does match that arrowhead right there. Okay. Another thing you could do is from the get-go, you could turn it around. The inequality opens toward the 2x. You could rewrite it as 2x minus 5 is greater than or equal to 11 and just solve it that way. Totally up to you. All right. So I'm going to skip the next page and we're going to do one of the fraction ones and then we'll be done. That way we keep it not too long of a video. All right. So we're going to skip down here. Same steps. We are going to add or subtract. So it looks like we're going to be subtracting that 5. All right. So last two. We are going to solve as we normally would. So first step is add or subtract. We're going to take away that 5. And then we've got this x over 2 less than negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. All right, this is the point where some of us kind of get confused since it's a fraction. We are not going to divide this time, okay? Because it's already a fraction, we're going to have to multiply by 2 to get rid of that. So we're going to have x is less than negative 8 times 2 is negative 16. All right, now that's where we know that negative 16 is our number. Don't forget the numbers get smaller this way when they're negative. All right, and then we're going to circle it and it's going to be open. Now we're going to test 0. All right, so 0, same process here. If we plug in a 0 right there, 0 divided by anything is just 0. So then we're left with 5 is less than negative 3. That is not true. So 0 does not work. So we're shading away from 0. And 0 would be over here. So we're going to shade to the left of 0. And again, that matches, this arrowhead matches with the less than symbol.